So how's everybody doing? It's been a pretty big day. It's been like a few days for everyone. I mean, it's been a year. Honestly, if you really want to talk about it, 2020 has been pretty interesting. It's been really bad. 2020 is like a brief that just says, "Hey, just make it go viral," right? It's the Kendall Jenner Pepsi commercial of years. And Pepsi, if you're out there and you're watching, you know what you did. It's inexcusable. So I've been working from home, like all of you probably. One thing that I've just missed is actually just getting out there, just going out, going anywhere. And so I was actually thinking about this last vacation I took. Luckily, I was able to go to Hawaii, and I felt right at home there. I wear sandals every day because it just made me feel like putting my feet in the sand. But it's not so strange to wear sandals every day nowadays. But even in the before times, I wore them at work, I wore them at home. I even wore them at my wedding, actually. And for 15 years, I was this brand loyalist. I always wore rainbow sandals. Rainbow sandals. They're a specific brand. I loved them. And so when I walked into this little Hawaiian surf shop, the owner saw the tan lines on my feet and he said, "Dude, you got to check these out. They're called olukai." He said it like that. It was very cool, olukai. I'll never be that cool. But he said they're the official sandal of the Hawaiian Lifeguard Association. He said they're so comfy. It's like walking on a pile of bunnies. Yeah. But later I was scrolling through my Instagram feed, and there they were, the sandals I was just looking at. So obviously I did what any sane person would do. I deleted my Facebook account, threw my phone into the Pacific. No, obviously I'd left this digital trail behind me. I was visiting the Olukai website. I was asking for reviews on Reddit, and I'd checked out the surf shop's Yelp page. So of course they'd use that to retarget me with ads. So I'd buy the sandals, which I did. I'm wearing them right now. 15 years as a rainbow brand loyalist, I turned to Olukai because I saw an ad that was relevant to me. And me, like was introduced so lovely, was my name is Jeremy Carson. I'm a creative director at Saatchi Saatchi in Los Angeles. And on the side, I do this. I talk to creative professionals about where our industry's headed, how we're supposed to get there. I do that through articles that I write at jeremycarson.com. And I also post a lot on LinkedIn. If any of you follow me on LinkedIn, I'm sorry. If you don't follow me, please follow me. I'm desperate for the attention. But we all are, really, if you really think about it. I mean, that's what our whole industry is built around, right? Attention. People have it. We want it. We force people to pay attention. Advertising has ruined everything because we demand people's attention by interrupting everything they do with our ads. But now we have to convince them to give us their attention, or else they tap, they swipe, they click, they skip. So today what I'm going to do, I'm going to talk about the thing that makes people pay attention more than anything else. Relevance. Is what you're saying relevant? Does it matter to everyone? Does it matter to anyone? Because that's what we do. We make ads, we make products, content, we make stuff that matters to people. And it's how we've worked for a really long time. Be relevant to people, everyone, all at once, all in the same way. What makes us human? What do we have in common? It's been like that forever in the industry. And if you talk to most creatives, you'll realize that we act as if that's just the only way to do it. But the truth is, we really just kind of got used to doing it that way. And of course, since I'm a creative, I'm going to blame it on the media department. Because sometime back in the 1950s, advertising media, it just froze for several decades. For a while, we knew that when you're watching a TV show, everyone's going to watch that same commercial. Everyone's going to hear the same radio spot. Everyone's going to see that same print ad. Everyone's going to drive by that same billboard. So we had to use themes like love and sex and babies and puppies and toilet paper. Things that are relevant to everyone, because we needed everyone to care about this one thing that we were saying. But these days, we live in this world where Hulu and Netflix, they tell us exactly what shows they think we want to watch, right? And Spotify puts out these fire daily mixes based on the music we love. YouTube makes billions of dollars a year, keeping people watching with its video recommendation engine. Your Instagram feed It's tailored to exactly what you want to engage with. Every single piece of content that we consume in this modern world is based on the idea of not just being relevant to people, but being relevant to a person, except for our marketing. At least not our brand marketing. I mean, sure, we may retarget wannabe Hawaiians with ads for the sandals that they were just looking for, but brand marketing, no, 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 no. Instead, we create these big brand moments, right? Super Bowl spots, TV ads, billboards, events, these things that unify people by tapping into culture, which is good. It's really good. We don't want to ignore that, but we can't just stop there. That big group of people that advertising talks to, it's made up of countless just smaller groups, subcultures, that each have their own relationship with the brands. There's modern brands, and they know that the culture, it brings us together. But subcultures, those define us. They make us feel like a person among all the people, part of a group, but still unique. And that is essential in creating a connection between people and a brand for your ads to actually matter to them. They come for the culture, they stay for the subculture. Interestingly enough, everyone's had a different idea on how to do this over the years, actually. Media claims we should focus on where the message is. Strategy and creative, they say why is important. And the big data out there, it says who you're talking to, it's the game changer. Everyone's right, of course, but everyone's trying to do it on their own. And I don't know, maybe it's because I'm a middle child, but I just want them all to get along. That's the only way to do it. The way we're going to make ads that matter to people on a personal level, the way that we're relevant to them individually, is to create unique messages about why our brand exists and why we're relevant to them, crafted for where someone sees it, that are different for who, different for each specific group and what they care about. Let me say that one more time, because that's kind of the main point of what I'm saying. We need to make ads that have unique messages about why our brand exists, crafted for where someone sees it, that are different for who, for each specific group and what they care about. It's important, but I've noticed that people, they aren't really sure what to call this. It's kind of a newer way of looking at things. I mean, we used to call it things like targeted marketing, right? But things are different now, and so we call it data-driven creative, or people-centric advertising, or the audience of one, right? I call it heart meets head. Taking the intelligent tools of things like performance marketing, data, targeting, segmentation, and then injecting this deep emotional creative storytelling that humans connect to. And that way, instead of strategy, focusing on this ideal person, one ideal person, or creative crafting a message that works for all people as humans, and then media putting that same thing in front of every single person everywhere, we all work towards this same goal, and its relevance to each person in a different way. But like I said, we all have to work together in order for that to happen. So there was this guy back in the 1960s. His name was Marshall McLuhan. Some of you may have heard of him. Marshall was the media theorist. He coined this phrase, the medium is the message. The medium is the message. What he meant was where you say something. Where you say something should affect how you say it. And that was really easy to see back in the 1960s because you think about it, there's like 4 types of content. There's videos, words, images, and sounds, right? Video, words, image, sounds. In the 60s, each one of those had their own place to live. You knew that a TV spot, it couldn't go on the radio because it had to be sound only. And a radio spot, it couldn't go into print because it had to be words and images. And a print ad, it couldn't go on the TV, it had to be a video. No doubt, right? There were these black and white lines between everything, and you knew that you had to say your message in this slightly different way for each one of those places. But the past decade or so, our attention has just become really fragmented. We've broken our attention into a dozen different devices, hundreds of different platforms, and those black and white lines, they've gotten really blurry. It happened really quickly. We weren't really sure what to do about it. I remember actually at my first couple of agencies, my creative directors, they would say things like, you know, our TV commercial, it's basically a video, right? Well, where do you put videos on the internet? I heard about YouTube. We should put it on YouTube. And you know, you can also put videos on Facebook here. And as long as it's under 60 seconds, there's this thing called Instagram. We should put our TV spot on Instagram. We'll get so many likes. It probably sounds familiar to some of you because we all did that. It was the wild west of the internet. We had to take these old rules, apply them to the new world. But now we know better, hopefully. We know that an image that you put on LinkedIn, it doesn't always feel right for Instagram, even though they're both images. And a video you put on YouTube, it doesn't have that same feeling as what you would put on Snapchat. And a radio spot that you'd make for SoundCloud, it doesn't have that same capability as what you could do on Spotify. We know that every platform has its own language, its own tone, its own feeling. And we think that they're the same, but people, they use different platforms in very different ways. Actually, interestingly enough, different people even use the same platform in very different ways. You see, I have a cousin. She has 5 kids. 5 kids. 4 boys. The youngest is a girl. She was really hoping for that girl. And her brother and her sister, they each have 2 kids of their own. And so we were all over my grandmother's house a while back for her 97th birthday, 97 years old. And all the kids, they were all in the living room. They were on their phones, of course, and they were on Instagram. And some of them, they were browsing photos, right? Some of them were commenting. Some of them were reading. Some were watching videos on mute. Others were watching stories, the vertical ones with the volume on. Some were on IGTV. That's that widescreen one. It has long form content. Some were going live. They were live streaming. Some were actually just using it to message each other back and forth. They were just using it as a messenger tool. And they're all between the ages of about 12 to 20. One generation, right? One generation. Now, we would normally say that one generation uses one platform in the same way. Obviously not the case, right? But it's not even just them, and it's not even just Instagram. Really think about it. Think about TV, television. Some people, they plug into one channel and they never change it. But I'm betting there's a few of you out there that are flippers. You know, you switch channels back and forth every 10 seconds and drive me insane. Yeah, some people, they watch live TV, sports, news, that kind of thing. Other people DVR every single thing that they want to watch, and they just fast forward through the commercials. We use every platform in completely different ways. We always have, but we have treated it as if everybody uses it in the same way. So to be relevant, to make something that matters to somebody, we need to make contextual creative. Contextual creative is creative that understands how people behave on that platform. But to do that requires doing something kind of insane, unnatural, some people might say. Media and creative need to work together. Yeah, I know. It's so crazy it might work. Because if media becomes the expert on consumption behavior, on how people consume content, creative can then hijack that behavior and work with them in order to change the mindset of the audience. But everyone has a different mindset, and you can only change it if you say the right thing to them. Simon Sinek, some of you have heard of him. He gave this TED Talk about 15 or so years. It's called Start With Why. He also called it the Golden Circle. And he said, the most beloved brands, they don't talk about what they do. They talk about why they do it. That's what matters to people, why a brand exists. Apple is a great example. It's what he talks about. He said that they don't say, hey, buy our computers, they're overpriced. No. They say, think different. We stand against the status quo. We stand for creativity and innovation. So as long as their products pay off on that why, we'll buy a computer from them. And we'll buy a smart home device or a music player or a phone, or we'll buy a watch. We'll buy whatever they make because we relate to why they do it. Nike is the same thing. They don't say, hey, buy our shoes, they're better than Reeboks. Remember Reeboks? I think they're still around. No. They say, we stand for an active lifestyle. We stand for action over inaction. So what do they say? I can't hear you through Zoom, but I'm guessing you're saying, just do it, right? When they create a campaign, they say that same thing to everybody, just do it. But they ignore the fact that just do it carries a different why, different meaning to different people. Strategy focuses on that big why, that big universal meaning, but it's usually based on what's called the aspirational audience, that singular person that we want to talk to. These days, guess who that aspirational audience is? It's usually a millennial. It's named Angela. She's either 22 or 37, because a college senior is definitely the same age and the same mindset as someone who has a mortgage and 2 kids. But she makes, let's just say, $70,000 a year. She has $249,000 in student debt, but Angela plays soccer. Okay? She plays soccer and she thinks that she's going to be the next Pele. So Nike aims its soccer campaign at her, and they want to say something to Angela. She's the aspirational audience. But what about Dwight, the teenager that lives in San Diego and plays FIFA? Or Stanley, the 45-year-old man that lives in New York and watches MLS? Or Pam, the 10-year-old who's just heard of Nike? They each have completely different relationships with what just do it means to them. And so we need to recognize that. We need to say something slightly different to each one of those people, but we don't. We don't. We have one brand message. It's relevant to people, but generic for a person. So what if strategy looked at everybody, not just that aspirational audience? What if we broke them up into groups based on their relationship with the brand, and they worked with media, and strategy worked with media to target those groups? Maybe there's 3 of them, maybe there's 10 of them, or 100 of them, however many there are. You need to be able to target them. Then we could talk to Angela and Dwight and Stanley and Pam and Jim and Michael and Phyllis. And yes, these are all characters from The Office. But my point is, if strategy has a different why for each mindset, creative can then focus on what's relevant for each one of those, for each person, for each group, for each subculture. So we know that people behave differently on different platforms. And we know that they have different meanings about what the brand should mean to them. But honestly, none of this should sound too crazy. But we have this opportunity to adapt to the different ways that each person consumes content, and to recognize why a brand matters to them. So what are we doing with that? The crazy part is, in order to address these things, we have to make unique content for every audience on every platform. Knowing who we're talking to, then we can find the person among the people, meaning we can actually address what people care about, what matters to them, in a way that they understand, in a way that matters for them to consume it. The old way of doing that would be to make a bunch of campaigns, one for each group, but that's not realistic. Even before COVID, before the pandemic, brands weren't exactly throwing money around. And as they say, half of what we spend on advertising is wasted, but we don't know which half. So let's look at this whole thing with fresh eyes, from an operations standpoint, from a creative standpoint, from a media and strategy standpoint. I said in the beginning that culture brings us together, but subcultures define us. So tap into culture. Create those big brand moments, but do it very sparingly. Know when to use it and when to do those different things, because when you know you have people's attention, then it's worth speaking to them as a big group. But spend most of your time on those subcultures. Find the different groups that you want to speak to. Craft messages specifically for them and tailor the content to how they consume it. And that is where data comes in. Data. Now data and creativity, we haven't had the best relationship. Saying data-driven creative, it used to mean that people press the red button more, so make the button red on everything instead of blue. But that's not the most creative use of data. Today, data, it's not just numbers and results. Data is people. It's what we do. It's what we care about. It's what we want. It's the key to everything that I've actually been talking about. It's knowing who you're talking to. So when we combine creativity and data, when we let the heart meet the head, we can say something that matters uniquely to them. That's what's changed. That is why I'm giving this talk now and why it's different now versus 20 years ago. We've never been able to do this in this way before. In the past, even if we wanted to focus on specific groups, specific subcultures, we didn't have the technology to only speak to them. We'd actually waste millions and millions of dollars saying something to people that they didn't care about, hoping that we'd reach a few people that did. But with modern times come modern tools. The internet, social media, digital media, big data, targeting, sequencing, segmentation, these are all tools at our disposal. Now, every dollar can be focused on saying the right thing to the right person in the right way. Now, I've got a secret for you. These modern companies, Facebook, Spotify, Twitter, Snapchat, Google, Netflix, Hulu, all of them, they're already doing this. They are. Some of you might be listening and you're like, yeah, we do this. But the reality is a lot of people aren't. But you have these in-house production companies, these departments whose sole purpose actually is to take the work that agencies make and rip it apart and then Frankenstein it back together so that it does everything that I've been talking about, makes it contextual, targets it with messages that are relevant to specific people. Or you may just make this work yourself. Sometimes you create the tools, sometimes they just use them better. But one thing is for sure, they've found a way to be relevant to a person by doing it differently than we've been doing it in the past. And honestly, most agencies are just trying to catch up. We're trying. Some of them are actually there already. Some of them are forging the way, but a modern world requires modern tools, and it scares people. We spent so long just rationalizing the way that we've made creative for the past 70 years. We've convinced ourselves that doing anything else, it's just going to kill creativity, right? Nostalgia, that's what kills creativity. Irrelevance kills creativity. And when creativity dies, the agency world dies. The agency is there to serve the client in a creative way. Otherwise, you could just churn out whatever it is that you need with anybody. But it doesn't matter about the tools that we use. It doesn't matter about whether 1 million people see it or 100. It doesn't matter if it's won a gold lion or just a smile from a stranger. Our job is simple. Make things that matter to people, that matter to a person. So Hemingway, he said that great art allows people to find meaning in it, right? Well, the guy was a drunk misogynist, but he knew what art was. Now, we're not trying to create fine art with what we're doing. We are trying to tell stories, though. Stories that are meant to connect with people. And for the first time, we don't have to just hope that people are going to find meaning in what we're saying. We'll know what that meaning is because we'll have made it a part of the stories that we're telling. We'll be able to look at our audience and say, we don't just want your attention. We want you to know that we recognize who you are and what matters to you. That we've taken the time to find you as a person among all these people. Thank you, everyone. That's all I got for you.
Thanks, Jeremy. I've got a couple of questions. If you have a moment, I could
oh, yeah.
read them over to you. Okay, this first one is, how can you implement this idea of subcultures in a small team with a limited budget?
Yeah, so that kind of goes back to what I was talking about. Think about the resources that you have and how many different subcultures you actually want to talk to. It could just be 3. But the big thing is understanding how to work within your limitations. So I work for a large agency, and we've got, luckily, a lot of resources that we're able to work with. And so we try to experiment with a lot of different techniques, but things that we found, things called modular storytelling. There's dynamic creative. If we talk about something as simple as a banner ad, there's technology that lets you have 5 images, but 70 different headlines, and it combines them in different ways based upon who it is that is seeing it. And so you come out of this with hundreds and hundreds of different pieces of creative, but you haven't had to actually build many pieces of creative. So it's using technology in your agency in order to facilitate the production of all of this work. But don't overkill it. I mean, I'm not saying, there's a limit of saying, personalization, one for every single person, but then these subcultures are about figuring out, well, what are these groups within the bigger group that we talk to? And is it worth speaking to that smaller group? Like, are they actually a big chunk of who we need to speak to? So figure out, based on the resources that you have, who it is that you can talk to and how much creative that you can actually make. It's possible for everyone. You just got to figure out what tools you have available.
Got it. Next one is, love the concept of heart meets head, exclamation point. But how do you inform creativity with data without constraining creative thought?
Yes. So, and sorry if you hear some banging in the background. There's a construction happening next door. So that's kind of my whole goal in speaking to all of you and in the articles that I write is to help people understand that data is not there to restrain or constrain creativity. It's essentially just a guide, right? If I want to look at it and say, well, people click the red button more than the blue button, well, that just means that, oh, okay, well, why did they click the red button? Well, because everything else on the page was blue. So if you put a blue button, that just means that you need to make it stand out. So you need to use the creativity within, like, the humanity within your heart in order to interpret what this kind of intelligence is telling you. But when we get a little bit deeper, the data that I really am interested in is what are people spending their time doing? Is the group that I'm talking to the kind of person that always goes to the coffee shop and then to a school and then back home, and that's based on geographic location data? You know, I'd want to speak to their daily routine. And so then I use my creativity in order to tell a story that relates to what it is that they're doing in their life. It's not about saying, okay, well, this group only watches a video for 3 seconds, so therefore all of our videos have to be 3 seconds long. Well, no, it just means that understand the most important part of what you say should be up in the first 3 seconds. Now, what you say, that's where creativity comes in. The data is just meant to be a guideline and a way to point you in the right direction.
Got it. We're getting close on time, so maybe just one more quick question. Is that okay?
Yeah.
How are you seeing the way that you produce campaigns change now that we're going into a global recession?
The odd thing is we're always, in my group at least, talking about how to work efficiently and make the most things for the least amount of effort and the least amount of money. So it's essentially just finding how do we do that. And it actually, what I'm seeing with our clients as well as a lot of other clients is leaning into what it is that I've been talking about and not spending too much time only on retail, because that's a very short term way of looking at things, but also not spending so much time on the bigger, broader, expensive stuff. Do a little bit of that and then focus on some of the more efficient media buys like digital and those types of elements. And that allows you to actually spend every dollar wisely and produce your work in a way that doesn't need to have that, $3 million polish every time you want to make a TV spot.
Excellent. Well, as usual, thank you so much, Jeremy. Amazing job. Definitely resonated with the audience, as I could see from the chat and some of the questions that came up.
Great.
Definitely, folks, reach out to Jeremy, hit him up on LinkedIn, Insta, all the social channels. I'm sure he'll be happy to have you join his following.
Absolutely. Thanks everyone for watching, and thanks for having me.
Thank you. And just quickly in closing, everyone, wow, what a day. I could honestly say I think we just about covered it all, folks. I hope everyone enjoyed and got as much out of today's festival as I did. Before we hang up and hit the leave button, I just want to take a quick second and give a very big thank you to the folks over at Henry Stewart for putting this all together and making this happen. I'd love to thank our sponsors, the speakers, the headliners, and really, most importantly, I want to thank you guys, because without you guys, there would be no creative ops practice or event like we experienced today. So please, with that, let's keep the conversation alive on social. Let's make sure we connect with everyone on LinkedIn. We definitely want to hear from you. And with that, until our next event, please stay safe, healthy, and goodbye for now. Thank you.